It starts with a promise: less stress, less waste, more sustainability. A simple idea that, in no time, turned into a global system. But when convenience becomes a brand, the line between truth and advertising quickly blurs. When HelloFresh was founded in Berlin in 2011, the concept seemed like the answer to a modern problem. People who don't have time to go shopping but still want to eat fresh and healthy. A box with precisely measured ingredients, a recipe card, everything delivered right to your doorstep. It sounded like an elegant solution at a time when convenience and sustainability were suddenly supposed to go hand in hand. The idea quickly became a global phenomenon. HelloFresh expanded into the USA, Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and many other countries. Today, the company is one of the largest of its kind worldwide, with billions in revenue, a stock market listing, and a clear brand identity: fresh, simple, and sustainable. In the advertisements, the world of HelloFresh is flawless. Young families laugh while cooking together, students prepare healthy meals, and stressed professionals enjoy their evenings because everything is already planned and portioned. The company promises to simplify the daily cooking routine while also protecting the environment. Less food waste, lower CO2 emissions, and more conscious consumption. These messages are part of a perfect narrative that has deeply imprinted itself on the consciousness of many consumers. HelloFresh stands for what makes modern brands so successful. Efficiency meets a clear conscience. But success is not achieved by good ideas alone. HelloFresh has created a system that skillfully responds, on a psychological level, to convenience, overwhelm, and the need for control. The weekly deliveries create routine. Once someone has ordered, they often stick with it. The subscription model provides stability while the marketing campaigns build trust. HelloFresh invests billions in advertising. The company doesn't just sell groceries, it sells a lifestyle. In the first years after going public in 2017, sales exploded, especially during the pandemic when millions of people cooked at home. HelloFresh became one of the big winners of the crisis. While restaurants had to close, the company grew to record heights. In 2021, HelloFresh made over €6 billion in revenue. But while the outside world was celebrating the company's rise, a different picture began to emerge in the background. Because more and more questions started to arise that no longer fit the perfect brand image. Is the packaging really environmentally friendly? Is the service actually sustainable, or just cleverly marketed? Why are so many customers complaining about problems with canceling, spoiled ingredients, or missing deliveries? And what does climate neutral mean when it comes from a company that ships millions of boxes around the world every day? These questions did not go unanswered, but the answers turned out to be complex. HelloFresh explained that they offset CO2 emissions through compensation projects, continuously improve packaging, and regularly review all processes. But doubts remained, and with them, interest from the media and consumer organizations grew. The image of the modern, sustainable meal kit service began to show its first cracks. Because the deeper you look into the structures, the clearer it becomes. HelloFresh's shiny surface is the result of carefully staged communication. The reality behind it is less perfect and less green. But to truly understand that, let's take a look at what happens when the box finally arrives and the first questions arise. The initial criticism of HelloFresh began quietly, in forums, on review platforms, in the comment sections of social networks. Customers who were initially enthusiastic began to share their experiences: missing ingredients, damaged packaging, spoiled meat. On review platforms like Trustpilot, customers report that instead of fresh ingredients, they mostly received packaging waste. Others reported deliveries that arrived days late, recipe cards that didn't match the contents, and stressed drivers who had to apologize for mistakes that weren't their fault. Even suppose promotional gifts caused frustration. In advertisements, HelloFresh promised for a long time a free dessert in every box or even free extras for a whole year. But many customers reported that these desserts were never available to choose or were simply missing from their deliveries. On platforms like Reddit, comments about these bait offers piled up. Even consumer protection advocates warned about misleading promotions that raised expectations the company often failed to meet. At first, such reports seemed like isolated cases, normal teething problems of a growing company. But over time, it became clear that the problems were systematic. The biggest complaint concerned the core of the business model, the subscription. Many customers thought they were placing a one-time order and were then surprised when the deliveries continued automatically. Cancellations were often difficult. Some users reported that it took them weeks or even months to actually end their subscription. Consumer advocates warned early on about non-transparent processes and legally questionable wording. The Consumer Center of North Rhine-Westphalia issued several warnings to HelloFresh, among other things for misleading statements and a lack of transparency in contract design. In one case, the company even had to adjust its advertising in 2022 after the Competition Center criticized the use of the term climate neutral as misleading, because the calculation was based on compensation measures, not on actual emission avoidance. For many consumers who had ordered specifically because of the sustainability promise, this was a breach of trust. The packaging issue also became a symbol of this contradiction. HelloFresh advertises less food waste, a plausible argument since the ingredients are portioned exactly. But the downside, every single ingredient is packaged separately, often in plastic. Fruit in foil, spices in tiny sachets, meat in double plastic layers, cooling packs in plastic bags. According to its own statements, the company is continuously working to reduce packaging or make it fully recyclable. But according to an analysis by the Greenpeace magazine, a HelloFresh box generates up to around 1 kilogram of packaging waste, depending on the menu and delivery location. A figure that is hard to reconcile with the company's sustainability promises. There were also reports of quality issues. In the US, HelloFresh recalled products in 2022 after salmonella was suspected in certain ingredients. Complaints about unrefrigerated deliveries during high outside temperatures also increased in Europe. The company stated that the cold chain was being maintained and that errors only occurred in isolated cases. But the more frequent these cases became, the greater the doubt grew as to whether the model could function reliably in this form at all. At the same time, public debate about the price began. The boxes, which were once advertised as a cost-effective and efficient alternative to the supermarket, had long since become a premium product. Those who ordered regularly paid, on average, significantly more than if they bought the items themselves in the store, often between 6 and 8 euros per portion. While many customers appreciated the convenience and predictability, others wondered whether, in the end, HelloFresh was really selling just one thing above all: convenience at any price. Meanwhile, the marketing campaigns continued unabated. According to the 2022 annual report, HelloFresh spent more than 1 billion euros on advertising worldwide. TV commercials spoke of conscious consumption, but the stronger the marketing became, the more apparent the contradictions became. More and more media outlets began to report critically. In the fall of 2023, Business Insider Germany published a report on the dark sides of the business model. Difficult working conditions in logistics centers, pressure on subcontractors, high turnover. The workload in the delivery warehouses was also criticized. Shift work, low wages, time pressure. HelloFresh rejected the accusations, promised improvements, and emphasized that they complied with all legal standards. But the image had already changed. HelloFresh was no longer just the likable meal kit provider from Berlin, but a global corporation with all the consequences that size and growth entail. With every report, every lawsuit, and every disappointed customer, the impression grew. Behind the friendly logo operates a machine fine-tuned for efficiency, where the promises of sustainability and fairness are increasingly coming under pressure. The first doubts had been raised, but they were only the beginning, because the biggest revelations about HelloFresh would not come from customers, but from insiders, journalists, and NGOs, about supply chains, working conditions, and ethical issues that went far beyond packaging waste. A central issue was the working reality in the fulfillment centers, those warehouses where the boxes are assembled and shipped. In the US and Germany, employees reported high time pressure, strict performance requirements, and an atmosphere where mistakes were hardly tolerated. In 2021, the US news portal Bloomberg investigated the working conditions at several HelloFresh locations in Colorado and Texas. The investigation revealed that many employees were temporary workers or migrants without long-term contracts, working for low wages and long shifts at temperatures around freezing. In the same year, the unions Unite Here and the Warehouse Worker Resource Center published reports accusing HelloFresh of actively hindering unionization. Employees reported that they were pressured not to form a union and experienced intimidation. The situation became even more sensitive when animal welfare organizations turned their attention to the company's supply chains. In 2022, PETA Asia published an investigation into coconut milk producers in Thailand who allegedly used tamed monkeys to harvest coconuts. As a result, several major food companies came under criticism, including HelloFresh, which at the time was sourcing coconut milk from Thailand. PETA called for an immediate halt to these supplies. HelloFresh then announced that it would no longer source coconut milk from suppliers that might tolerate such practices. Questions also began to mount regarding food sourcing. How regional are the ingredients really? How much control does HelloFresh actually have over suppliers in other countries? According to the company, many products are sourced locally, but investigations by The Guardian and Foodwatch International revealed that numerous ingredients, from meat to spices, come from global supply chains whose ecological and social impact is unclear. There is also a structural problem: the logistics of the business model itself. Every week, millions of boxes are individually packed and transported over long distances. According to an analysis by the Öko-Institut Freiburg from 2023, meal kits cause, on average, higher CO2 emissions than traditional grocery shopping once transport and packaging are taken into account. Meanwhile, the company struggled with falling share prices on the stock market. After the pandemic boom, demand collapsed in 2023. Many customers returned to restaurants or looked for cheaper alternatives. The share value of HelloFresh dropped by more than 60% over the course of the year. The company responded with cost reductions, automation, and a strategic shift toward ready meals and snacks. At the same time, former employees reported intense internal pressure in the marketing and PR departments. A former communications manager said in an interview with Business Insider Germany that it had become increasingly difficult to bridge the gap between the public image and the actual problems within the company. According to the employee, sustainability was a core message, but not a lived reality. Yet even as criticism and reports increase, HelloFresh remains active. The company responds publicly with statements, initiatives, partnerships, and extensive sustainability reports. But many observers are now asking themselves, is this the beginning of real change or just well-managed damage control? In the summer of 2025, HelloFresh once again made headlines. In California, the company agreed to a settlement of $7.5 million after consumer advocates accused the corporation of luring customers with hard-to-cancel subscriptions and misleading free offers such as free meals or gifts in every box. HelloFresh denied the allegations but did adjust its advertising claims. At the same time, investigations are still ongoing in the US into alleged child labor at a supplier that produces ready-made meals for the Factor brand. This question leads to the next level of the story, to the moment when corporations begin to defend themselves and consumers as well as regulatory authorities try to look behind the PR facade. When criticism of HelloFresh increased in recent years, the company responded quickly, professionally, and with a clear strategy. Outwardly, they demonstrated transparency and a willingness to learn. In press releases, HelloFresh repeatedly emphasized that they take every complaint seriously and are continuously working on improvements. But if you take a closer look at their communication, you notice a pattern. The company rarely addresses the accusations themselves, but rather talks about its efforts to resolve them. As a result, criticism is not directly refuted, but neutralized. For example, in 2023, HelloFresh published a comprehensive sustainability report in which the company committed itself to topics such as CO2 balance, packaging reduction, and fair working conditions. The document spanned over 100 pages, filled with statistics, certificates, and positive developments. To the layperson, this sounded like significant progress. However, environmental organizations criticized that many of the key figures were not comparable or could hardly be independently verified. Legally as well, HelloFresh had to learn how to deal with resistance. After receiving a warning regarding its climate-neutral advertising, the company decided to choose its wording more carefully in the future. Instead of climate-neutral, it was now referred to as climate-conscious. A small linguistic shift, but with a big impact. In addition, HelloFresh intensified its presence on social media. Through influencers and sponsored content, the company tried to strengthen the trust of its younger target audience. While heated debates about working conditions were taking place on Twitter and Reddit, videos appeared on Instagram and TikTok showing satisfied customers unpacking meal kits, chopping vegetables, and talking about sustainable enjoyment. But outside of marketing, the counter-movement was gaining structure. Consumer protection organizations published step-by-step guides on how to legally cancel a HelloFresh subscription. Lawyers offered free template letters, while NGOs like Foodwatch and the Changing Markets Foundation called for stricter controls on companies that advertise with sustainability. In 2024, the European Commission examined for the first time whether meal kit providers would have to meet stricter transparency requirements in the future. In the United States, the first class action lawsuits even began to form. Consumers felt deceived by misleading advertising or non-transparent contract terms. Some proceedings are still ongoing, while others ended in out-of-court settlements. HelloFresh itself usually commented only briefly on the matter. They stated that they comply with applicable laws and carefully review all complaints. It is interesting to see how the company responded internally to the public pressure. According to former employees, communication guidelines were tightened. Anyone who spoke about internal processes risked receiving a warning. At the same time, the topic of sustainability was declared a top management priority. Executives presented ambitious goals at conferences: 50% less packaging waste by 2030, carbon-neutral supply chains, more recycling. Impressive on paper, but difficult to measure in practice. At the same time, new competitors entered the scene. Regional providers like Marley Spoon or sustainable startups focusing on organic ingredients advertised exactly what HelloFresh once promised: genuine transparency, local products, and personal service. For HelloFresh, this meant not only a loss of image, but also market share increasingly going to smaller, more credible brands. For the industry as a whole, HelloFresh serves as a case study. The idea of delivering fresh meals directly to people's homes has excited millions, but it has also shown how narrow the line is between innovation and illusion. If a business model is to work in the long run, it can't just be convenient. It also has to be honest. Packaging can be recycled, but images cannot. Many analysts expect the market to shrink in the coming years. The pandemic euphoria is over and the economic situation is tense. Consumers are saving again. HelloFresh is responding with new strategies, partnerships with supermarket chains, expanding snacks and ready meals, and advertising campaigns that focus more on health and family values. But whether this realignment will win back trust remains to be seen. Part of HelloFresh's future will depend on how consistently policymakers and the public push for transparency going forward. In Brussels, there is currently a debate about an EU-wide labeling requirement for climate claims. Companies that use terms like climate neutral or sustainable will in the future have to prove what these claims are based on. If this regulation comes into effect, it will not only affect HelloFresh, but the entire food industry. It's interesting that it is precisely the most critical consumers, those who question HelloFresh today, who are indirectly contributing to its further development. Without pressure, doubt, and public discussion, the company probably would never have started to disclose its supply chains or talk about fair working conditions. HelloFresh wanted to make cooking easier, and in doing so, has shown just how complicated the promises of modern brands really are. Maybe that's ultimately the ingredient that no one ordered.